All right, let's get the show on the road, huh? Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. Hopefully people will filter in from the exhibit hall. Thank you very much. All right, welcome to Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, home of the Liberty Bell and the National Constitution Center. And of course, we're between the banks of the Schuylkill and Delaware rivers here in Philadelphia. Thank you to all of you coming out to the meeting and attending the annual meeting of the Society for Freshwater Science. My name is Dave Arscott. I'm your incoming president and also program chair of this year's meeting, of which there were many on the committee. So I thank all of those helping to bring this conference to you today. I'm also the executive director of Stroud Water Research Center. We'll have my colleague Scott Ensign come up and share a few words about the Stroud Center in just a moment. But certainly I'd like to extend my personal welcome as well, and thanks again for everyone attending tonight. You have a packed agenda over the next 4 days. Much of it focused on our conference theme. Thank you for connecting there, connecting to enhance freshwater science. Sherry Johnson will dive a little bit deeper into the theme. We have more than 900 attendees this year. Again, thank you all for coming out. And this truly is your conference. Hopefully you'll take some ownership there. We tried to provide a smooth schedule for you, but there are 650 oral presentations over the next 4 days. We have 2 poster sessions with a total of about 240 posters on the venue. Poster hall will be just over behind the divided wall here. First one is tomorrow. The second poster session will be on Wednesday. We also have 4 amazing plenary presentations to start each day. We'll be starting at 8:30, and plenary should wrap up by 10 o'clock. We have plenty of exhibitors in the exhibit hall that you've already seen and hopefully interacted with. Please visit them. And society information tables from the journal to the refresh to membership, etc. Student Resources Committee and the annual silent auction and live auction later in the week. We have taxonomy fair and a fun run where you'll finish in front of the Rocky statue, right? So hopefully that'll bring some excitement and photo ops for you all. Let's see, we have a wonderful off-site social planned as well. Thank you all for purchasing that extra little ticket to visit the Brooklyn Bowl, where we'll have some live music and opportunities to do some bowling and just great networking time and food in the evening. And of course, there are several ways to learn more about all of our good work in our committees and our chapters throughout the society. So stay tuned and check out those information opportunities. Tonight, though, we're here to welcome you all and open the meeting and celebrate service to our society and lifetime achievements of some of our members. But before we get to that, it's my pleasure to introduce to you, slide please, there we go, Chief Dennis Coker, a lifelong resident of Kent County, Delaware. Dennis J. Coker has been honored to be elected Principal Chief of the Lenape Indian Tribe of Delaware since 1996. And of course, you are all sitting in the ancestral lands of the Lenni Lenape. Whoa, we have auto advance going. If you can kill the slides and turn the timing off, that would be helpful. So during Chief Coker's term as chief of the Lenni Lenape, he's had successful contributions within the Delaware State Historic Preservation Office and the Federal Census Bureau. His tribe was awarded a census designation area, allowing tribal members to include their ethnicity as Lenape in 2010 census for the first time in history. And on August 3rd, 2016, Delaware's Governor Jack Markell signed legislation officially recognizing the long and continued history of the Lenape community in the state of Delaware. Chief Coker's service as past chairman of the Confederation of Sovereign Nanacoke Lenape Tribes of the Delaware Bay has allowed him to effect progress towards recognition of the indigenous human rights of all member tribes. His membership in the National Congress of the American Indian and founding membership in the Alliance of Colonial-Era Tribes has brought recognition, furthered understandings, and developed collaborations for the betterment of Delaware's indigenous people. Chief Coker, help me welcome Chief Coker to the stage for a few words.
Can't see anybody. Thank you so much. The Lenape, as well as most native peoples across the land, when they begin their celebrations, they always begin with an acknowledgement and appreciation for the natural world. So I have a reading here I'd like to share with you, which does exactly that. I call it the words before other words. So this is what we do before we do anything else. Today we have gathered, and as we look upon the faces around us, we see the cycles of life continue. We've been given the duty to live in balance and harmony with each other and with all living things. So now let us bring our minds together as one as we give greetings and thanks to each other as people. We are thankful to our Mother Earth, for she gives us everything that we need for life. She supports our feet as we walk upon her. It gives us joy that she still continues to care for us, just as she has from the beginning of time. To our Mother Earth, we send thanksgiving, love, and respect. We give thanks to all the waters of the world for quenching our thirst, for providing strength and nurturing life for all beings. We know its power in many forms: waterfalls and rain, mist and streams, rivers and oceans, snow and ice. We are grateful that the waters are still here and meeting their responsibility to the rest of creation. Can we agree that the water is important to our lives and bring our minds together as one to send greetings and thanks to the water? We turn our thoughts to all the fish in the water. They were instructed to cleanse and purify the water. They also give themselves to us as food. We are grateful that they continue to do their duties, and we send to the fish our greetings and our thanks. Now we turn towards the vast fields of plant life. As far as the eye can see, the plants grow, working many wonders. They sustain many life forms. With our minds gathered together, we give thanks and look forward to seeing the plant life for many generations to come. When we look about us, we see that the berries are still here, providing us with delicious foods. The leader of the berries is the strawberry, the first to ripen in the spring. Can we agree that we are grateful that the berries are with us in this world and send our thanksgiving, love, and respect to the berries? With one mind, we honor and thank all the food plants we harvest from the garden, especially the three sisters who feed the people with such abundance. Since the beginning of time, the grains, the vegetables, the beans, and fruit have helped the people survive. Many other living things draw strength from them as well. We gather in our minds all the plant foods and send them a greeting and thanks. Now we turn to the medicine herbs of the world. From the beginning, they were instructed to take away sickness. They are always waiting and ready to heal us. We are so happy that there are still among us those special few who remember how to use the plants for healing. With one mind, we send thanksgiving, love, and respect to the medicine plants and the keepers of the medicine. Standing around us, we see all the trees. The earth has many families of trees, who each have their own instructions and uses. Some provide shelter and shade, others fruit and beauty, and many useful gifts. The maple is the leader of the trees, to recognize this gift of sugar when the people need it most. Many people of the world recognize a tree as a symbol of peace and strength. With one mind, we greet and thank the tree life. We gather our minds together to send our greetings and thanks to all the beautiful animal life of the world who walk about with us. They have many things to teach us as people. We are grateful that they continue to share their lives with us and hope that it will always be so. Let us put our minds together as one and send thanks to the animals. We put our minds together as one and thank the birds who move and fly about over our heads. The Creator gave them the gift of beautiful songs. Each morning they greet the day with their songs and remind us to enjoy and appreciate life. The eagle was chosen to be their leader and to watch over the world. To all the birds, from the smallest to the largest, we send our greetings and thanks. We are all thankful for the powers we know as the four winds. We hear their voices in the moving air as they refresh us and purify the air we breathe. They help to bring the change of seasons. From the four directions they come, bringing us messages and giving us strength. With one mind, we send our greetings and thanks to the four winds. Now we turn to where our grandfathers, the thunder beings, live. With lightning and thundering voices, they bring with them the water that renews life. We bring our minds together as one to send greetings and thanks to our grandfathers, the thunderers. We send greetings and thanks to our eldest brother, the sun. Each day without fail, he travels the sky from east to west, bringing the light of a new day. He is the source of all the fires of life. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to our brother, the sun. We put our minds together and give thanks to our oldest grandmother, the moon, who lights the nighttime sky. She is the leader of women all over the world, and she governs the movement of the ocean tides. By her changing face, we measure time, and it is the moon who watches over the arrival of children here on earth. Let us gather our thanks for our grandmother moon together in a pile, layer upon layer of gratitude, and then joyfully fling that pile of thanks high into the night sky that she will know. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to our grandmother, the moon. We give thanks to the stars who are spread across the sky like jewelry. We see them at night, helping the moon to light the darkness and bring dew to the garden and growing things. When we travel at night, they guide us home. With our minds gathered as one, we send greetings and thanks to all the stars. We gather our minds to greet and thank the enlightened teachers who have come to help throughout the ages. When we forget how to live in harmony, they remind us of the way we were instructed to live as people. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to these caring teachers. We now turn to the Creator, or Great Spirit, and send greetings and thanks for all of the gifts of creation. Everything we need to live a good life is here on our Mother Earth. For all the love that is still around us, we gather our minds together as one and send our choicest words of greetings and thanks to the Creator. We now have arrived at a place where we end our words before other words. Of all of the things that we have named, it is not our intention to leave anything out. If something was forgotten, we leave it to each individual to send such greetings and thanks in their own way. And now our minds are one. So I'd like to just finish with a quote from Rachel Carson. Only within the moment of time represented by the present century has one species, man, acquired significant power to alter the nature of the world. Aho. Thank you. Wanishi.
All right, next slide, please. Maybe. It's not appearing again, but I want to first thank all of our sponsors and exhibitors here today. Again, check them out. Stroud Center is the lead sponsor for the conference, and I'd like to invite the Assistant Director of Stroud Water Research Center, Dr. Scott Ensign, to the stage. He's also a research scientist and will be presenting during the week. A few words from the Stroud Center. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks very much. The Stroud Center is really excited to sponsor the meeting, and just a few slides that I was going to share to celebrate the long relationship that the Stroud Center has had and our staff with the society. And we will move forward. We will move forward. We will move backwards. Okay, starting with the Stroud Center's mission, which is very much aligned with many of the goals of the society. And starting with Ruth Patrick, who was our founder and laid the intellectual foundation on which we continue to build. Robin Vinote helped Ruth establish the Stroud Center and played a leading role in conceptual developments in our field. Of course, Burn Sweeney led the Stroud Center for nearly 20 years, making major contributions to the society along the way. Dennis Newbold's lifelong contributions to our science have been recognized twice by the society. Lou Kaplan played several roles in the society during his long tenure at the Stroud Center. John Jackson also plays several roles in the society and continues to lead our entomology group at the Stroud Center. Mike Broomall coordinates the society's taxonomic certification program. And of course, David Arscott leads the Stroud Center and the society. The next generation of Stroud Center scientists, Diana Oviedo Vargas and Mark Papak, continue our contributions to the society's success. Finally, this statistic stands in for the many contributions and numerous staff who have both published in and reviewed for the society's journals. So thank you very much. Have a great meeting.
Thank you, Scott and Stroud, for being one of our many sponsors. I'm Sherry Johnson. I've been the president this last year, and it's wonderful to see you all. It's been an exciting year, and we so have looked forward to getting together and having lively discussions throughout this week. If we could, before presenting the career awards, which we'll do in just a few minutes, I'd like to share a little bit about our meeting theme. Dave mentioned it earlier, and we chose to focus on connections because they're so integral to our lives and to our ecosystems. Whether we think about river networks or aquatic ecosystems, they're natural nexus that encourage connections between physical, social, and biological ecosystems. with climate change and the environmental issues that are highlighting our unexpected implications for our systems and the associated human and ecological issues. In times of rapid environmental and social change, these systems and the communities that have the strongest connections have been suggested to show the greatest resilience. So by connecting across with colleagues from other regions, countries, backgrounds, and disciplines, not only here at our annual meeting, but starting more with our chapter meetings. And we have opportunities to share new findings, new perspectives across multi-generations, from students, teachers, researchers, and managers. As we all know, Society for Freshwater Science strives to facilitate opportunities for multiple types of connections. And you'll see that during the meeting this week, not only sessions, workshops that were going on today, but the mixers and the evening activities. We really hope that the understanding that comes out of these meetings can enhance our diverse community of freshwater scientists, and that we are enabled and ready to address pressing issues through resilient science. So now I have the honor of presenting our Leadership and Career Awards. Our first is a Leadership Award, which recognizes earlier mid-career members for their extraordinary work on behalf of the Society. This is our newest award, and we're proud to offer that to Dr. Carla Atkinson. I get to read a little bit about Carla's background and why she qualified for this. So.
Oh, sorry.
Come on up. Carla's an associate professor in Department of Biological Sciences at University of Alabama, and she's been a really active member of SFS for more than 15 years, from starting as a master's student with Alan Kovich to her PhD work with Karen Vaughn at University of Oklahoma. Carla's a former Heinz awardee, and her science on aquatic ecosystem and freshwater mussels has been informing research and management questions throughout her leadership, in organizing public outreach activities and serving on state panels. Her leadership in freshwater science goes well beyond her scholarship. She's really worked to enrich our society in many capacities, including through service on committees, organizing special sessions, mentoring students and early career scientists, and most recently is the co-founder and current chair of a new chapter, our Southeast chapter of Society for Freshwater Science. As much as anything, her dedication to training the next generation of freshwater scientists is impressive and really effective. Through all of her efforts, Carla's proved herself to be a tireless leader in aquatic ecology, conservation, and management of our systems. So I was going to say, please help me welcome Carla.
I came up early.
Yeah.
Scott will take your picture.
Okay. I thought you know.
Thanks. Thanks.
Our next award is Environmental Stewardship Award. This award is given to a person who has successfully translated scientific knowledge into the public arena through policy or regulatory reform, or conducted research that enhances freshwater ecosystems, rehabilitation, and conservation. Dr. Lucinda Johnson is an aquatic and landscape ecologist whose research focuses on the impacts of multiple stressors on aquatic ecosystems, with the emphasis on human activities and climate change. For many years, Lucinda was the director of research at the Natural Resources Research Institute at University of Minnesota Duluth, and she is currently a senior research fellow there. Lucinda is also an SFS fellow, served as the NAB's secretary for 6 years, and is a past president of our society. Her career has involved leading multidisciplinary research teams to address issues of regional to global concern for freshwater ecosystems. Her a particular focus of hers has been on the Great Lakes area. Her research and advisory activities integrate and inform research, management, and policy, especially around climate change, mining, and industrial remediation. During her career, she served on top boards and committees, including Minnesota Governor's Climate Change Advisory Council, and participated in a number of EPA national advisory panels. She currently serves as a U.S. co-chair of the International Joint Commission's Science Advisory Board for the Science Priority Committee, and also as a vice chair of the Executive Committee for EPA's Board of Scientific Counselors, where she led the review of the agency's research on PFAS. Please help me acknowledge Dr. Johnson as she accepts the SFS Environmental Stewardship Award.
I have just two things to say to this audience, and the first is thank you to the people that came before me in accepting this award, but also thank you to my mentors throughout my career. Sitting right here, Cliff Dahm was one of those folks that pushed me into leadership positions when he was president. I was the secretary, and later on he nominated me to be president. So thank you very much, Cliff. Secondly, those of us in academia spend years and years and years collecting data, and sometimes we feel like there is no impact. It is a wonderful feeling to get out of that aspect of just collecting data to going out and working with organizations, agencies, NGOs, folks that have impact and are working on the ground. I really encourage all of you to get out of your labs, get out of your lab notebooks, and work with the folks that are on the ground. It is an amazing feeling to have your science turn into impact. So thank you very much to the folks that nominated me for this award. And I want to express a special thank you to Sherry, not only for doing a great job as president this year, but also serving along with Randy Fuller as my right-hand person when we were trying to change the name of the organization so many years ago. Thanks, folks.
Our next award is Distinguished Service Award, which recognizes a society member who's made a genuine and lasting contribution to the betterment of the society. Dr. Betsy Colburn is an aquatic ecologist and an associate at the Harvard Forest, where she has conducted research on headwater streams, vernal pools, and worked on many conservation-related issues. At SFS and as NABS before it, Betsy served as the co-chair of the Science Policy Committee and as a member of, and then became the chair of, the Finance Committee for 5 years. Betsy's leadership on the Finance Committee provided crucial stability, transparency, and foresight in our society's planning and decision-making. A quote from Betsy's nomination for Distinguished Service Award: "Betsy's steadfast dedication to the society is evident in her meticulous analysis of an annual budget, her efforts to dive into the details of accounts and records, and her regular expressions of gratitude to her committee members." As a Finance Committee chair, Betsy was a consistent and strong voice for the wise and careful stewardship of SFS financial resources, and she's greatly contributed to the ongoing and long-term financial health and stability of our society. Please, let's thank Betsy for her distinguished service to SFS.
First of all, boy, those lights are bright. First, my heartfelt thanks to everybody who worked with the Finance Committee, served on it during my term, before, and now. It's collaboration, these efforts, that produce the good results that Sherry was talking about. I'm also grateful to my husband for his support during those 5 years. He wanted to be here, but he's been sidelined with a broken rib at home. Thank you also to everybody who donated money to the Society. Then and now, the gifts you make allow the Society to do things that otherwise can't do. So it's really, really valuable. And thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, finally, for those who nominated and supported me for this award, because it is truly a great honor. I want to say quickly that the roots of this award for me go back 48 years when I was a graduate student starting my doctoral research, and I met Rosemary Mackay, and I was introduced to NABS. And those were two huge things in 1 week. At the time, there were very few established female freshwater scientists, and Rosemary was the first one I'd met, and for a very long time, the only one. If you look around the room now, you can see that things have changed a lot, but it was very different then. It's good. Rosemary had come down for Toronto to the University of Wisconsin-Madison Lake Lab to talk about her work on caddisflies. And I quickly discovered that we had shared passions for Trichoptera, temporary waters, good writing, and gardens. So it was just natural. It was great. After the visit, she and a bunch of us went over to La Crosse, and I had my first NABS meeting. And all I remember is sitting in a classroom with a bunch of guys perked on some wooden desks at the front of a classroom, talking enthusiastically about being microscatologists, studying caddisfly poop in relation to the size of the apertures in the filtering nets. And all I could think was, this is the place for me. It took me 10 years to make it to another NABS meeting, and that was in Lawrence, Kansas, and it was a great meeting, but one significant event there was, again, seeing Rosemary, and at that meeting she received this award for her work editing the Society Journal. And I thought at the time, in 10 years, I would like to have done something for the Society. Well, it's been a heck of a lot longer than 10 years. You don't know when an opportunity that arrives by chance is going to change your life. I don't know why Kim Haig asked me to sit on the Finance Committee many, many years ago. I was extremely lucky that the late Mike Swift was there to help me through my first several years, or I would not have survived. But thanks to the good guidance I got and the good collaboration, I'm very happy that it seems that my service on the Finance Committee has benefited our society and I hope advanced our science. It is truly an honor. Thank you again for this recognition. And I do urge all of you to think about volunteering because it can be stressful and crazy, but can also be really fun and rewarding. Thank you.
Our Award of Excellence goes to Professor Stuart Bunn, and I needed my notes because he's done so much. But I will leave most of the time for him to tell us about his experiences. Stuart's currently an emeritus professor at the Australian Rivers Institute at Griffith University in Brisbane and was its founding director. He completed his PhD at University of Western Australia, moved to the University of Waterloo, Canada, for a postdoc with Professor Noel Hines, and then returned to Australia for a teaching appointment at Griffith University. He was elected as a Fellow of the Australian Academy of Science in 2022. He is currently a member of the Murray-Darling Basin Authority and has previously served as a National Water Commissioner and as a Director of Land and Water Australia. Stuart was also our host last year at the Brisbane joint meeting. Stuart's made foundational contributions to river science and policy and has been a leader in global issues of freshwater biodiversity, sustainability, and water management. His major research interests are the ecology of river and wetland systems, with a particular focus on the science to inform water resource and river management issues. He's led the development and implementation of major collaborative research programs in partnership with state and government agency, industry, and universities. Let's welcome Dr. Bunn as he shares his perspectives on excellence in freshwater science. And you'll switch the slides now?
One more.
The Bunn sides, please.
All right, thanks, Sherry. It is a great honour to receive this award. I went to my first SFS or NABS meeting in 1987 in Orono, Maine. And I've been to a number of meetings, of course, since then. And one of the things I will say, a standout for me is this is such a warm and welcoming society, even to people like me who speak with a funny accent from halfway around the world. And I thank the society for that. It's been, it's been a real blast to come to meetings here. I thought I should also thank my colleagues in the society who nominated me for this award. I'm really appreciative of it. I thought I'd tonight just reflect a little bit on my career and share some experience, I guess, of walking between the two worlds of freshwater science and water policy, and my experience in going from studying small streams and the things that live in them to looking at some global water issues. So start with some background. Many of you will know I started out as a benthic ecologist. I did my PhD on the structure and function of benthic communities. I don't know how many leaf litter bags that I made and watched decompose. I counted tens of thousands and measured tens of thousands of macroinvertebrates. And a lot of my early work was heavily influenced by reading the work of Noel Hines and particularly his seminal work, The Stream and Its Valley, which really helped shape the work that I did. And also the work that Ken Cummins and colleagues, and particularly Ken's work on functional feeding groups. These were really quite informative in shaping the work that I did when I started out. Both Ken and Noel ended up being two of my examiners for my PhD, and I managed to meet both of them during my candidature as a student. Ken came to Australia in 1983 for a conference, and I had the good fortune of travelling around in a four-wheel drive, teaching him some Australian terms as we bounced around the countryside. And Noel Hines too visited Australia in 1984. He came to receive an award for the Australian Society of Freshwater Science, and I had helped to organise that conference, so he came out. And again, I had the good fortune of spending some time with Noel at that time. And those sort of early meetings with the two very influential ecologists for me were really quite career-changing. Noel Hines then offered me a postdoc position at the University of Waterloo, and I left Australia and went there and joined a couple of groups that were doing work in Canada, and I was able to go up and spend some time studying freshwater food webs in an Arctic river in the north of Quebec. I did a whole range of other things there for 2 years. And then I landed a position back in Australia on the other side of the Australian continent in Brisbane as a teaching appointment. And I went back to really doing what I'd done before, studying rainforest streams, mostly benthic ecology, and I was able to continue the work that I'd started in Canada, looking at food webs and particularly using stable isotope traces as a tool to understand the structure of freshwater food webs. But very much at that stage of my career, this is very much still, for me, bucket and net type of research. It was the sort of thing you could fund with small research grants, the sort of thing you could do by just driving up into the field. And that really was a continuation of the work that I'd done for my PhD. My perspective on doing freshwater science changed a lot, though, in the early 1980s, and largely I put it down to it was a series of exchanges we had with colleagues from South Africa. And at that time, as the South Africa started opening up to the world again, and just before their free elections, we had visits from freshwater scientists and water managers from South Africa. They came to a workshop in Brisbane, and then a couple of years later we had a return visit and met with a whole range of people in Cape Town. And it became really clear that although these were freshwater ecologists, they were very much studying things that I would call priority water management issues. They were looking and working very closely with their water agency around water allocation planning and how do you make sure that the rivers had enough water for the environment itself. They were doing things on managing riparian lands and looking at how you do that better to improve water quality, things about assessing stream ecosystem health. And their focus was pretty much on bigger river systems, the things where a lot of the water problems really were. And they weren't really studying the sort of small undisturbed streams that I'd been looking at. And their argument was that if they only did that, then with all the development and pressures that were going on, there would be no more rivers for them to study. And so their focus was very much on doing science, but really addressing that very urgent need that the science need to inform decision-making before things changed irreversibly. And this is, I guess, a theme that I want to come back to a little bit later in the presentation this evening. So my focus, though, the sort of more fundamental work that I've done has really been on food webs. I really like this quote by this French entomologist, Fabre, who notes that it's really the stomach that sways the world, that the data supplied by food are the chief of all the documents of life. And the sorts of questions that I've been interested in are things like what are the primary sources that sustain consumers, and particularly focusing on what are the things that animals need for their growth and reproduction. Where and when do those sort of high quality resources become available to consumers? And importantly, how do human activities impact on those processes? And as I mentioned, I've used stable isotope traces in particular, but also other traces to try and answer those questions, which are really quite powerful tools in understanding what the sources and fate are of different primary sources within food webs. And I've had the good fortune, partly by design, to study those questions across a wide range of biomes, not just in Australia but also overseas. And one of the things, I guess, that's really taught me is that the moment you really think you understand a particular process or understand what's going on, if you go somewhere new and where the conditions are very, very different, you suddenly have to rethink what it is that you've understood and taken for granted. And I've found that to be a really important lesson, I guess, in when you think you know something, go somewhere else and try it, because you often find that your assumptions are not met when you get there. And I think that's, having been able to do that has really opened up for me, a greater understanding of some of the key processes that I've worked on. And I guess from that work, one of the things it's also taught me is that it's often the little things that are really important. And when I look across the food web work I've done in wetlands and streams and large rivers, it's often the really little things, the microalgae, that tend to play this really disproportionate role in supporting food webs, the things that invertebrates and fish are dependent on. They also turn out to be some of the more difficult things to sample as well. And having not trained as a botanist, it was always a real struggle for me to to learn a lot more about the microscopic part of the world that seems to be so important. And of course, our food web work, when we've done analyses, whether we're looking at big tropical systems like this, which are dominated by macrophytic plants, it's the microalgae that often turn out to be really important. They are the ones that are sustaining grazing invertebrates and ultimately the larger predatory invertebrates and small fish. And then, of course, from that, the larger species of fish that dominate those systems. The only real exception to that I've found over the years has been these guys, and as it turns out, the largest aquatic predator in rivers in northern Australia turns out to largely feed on terrestrial prey, and so it's really taking a huge subsidy from the terrestrial environment, largely in the form of feral pigs and sometimes buffalo, but it's largely a terrestrial feeder, and that was a big surprise to us given that this is, as I said, the biggest predator in freshwater systems in the north of Australia. Now, having worked for a while and recognised that if algae are really important, one of the key questions that we hoped to answer was, well, if they are really important, where and when are these really high quality sources of food available in the landscape? And to do that, we set up some large projects, collaborative projects with botanists, people who know more about macrophytes than I do, remote sensing people, hydrologists. And in this particular piece of work, we then measured the amount of algal production that was going on in different macrophyte habitats through a combination of remote sensing and field-based work. We're able to map where those habitats were across the landscape. When you take that information and put it together with the inundation patterns for that part of the world as well, you can start to produce maps of where and when all the high quality food is being produced. And so the diagrams on the right there represent 2 times of the year, showing, of course, that not everywhere in the landscape are the same in terms of food availability. And there are particular parts of the landscape that turn out to be really, really important in providing high quality food sources for consumers. And knowing where those things are and knowing when and where those food sources are available is really key to understanding which parts of the landscape are more important to manage. We've also then looked at, well, knowing that those sources of food are available, do the actual consumers in there, particularly the mobile consumers, take advantage of that? And we were able to show through some work that Tim Jardine, a postdoc at the time, led on this particular study, that yes, indeed, using traces, we can show that these larger consumers are moving out onto the floodplain, taking advantage of really high quality and highly productive sources of food during the period of inundation, and that their growth in biomass is largely dependent on those sources, which may only be available for a short window of time. And more recently, we've extended that work to start to look at, well, if those are really important places and they are really important sources of energy, what happens when you start to fragment the system through water resource development or change the patterns of flow because of water extraction in the upper catchments? And the 2 images you're seeing there, the one on the left is a typical pattern of inundation on the floodplain of this river in northern Australia. And the one on the right really reflects what would happen if proposed development took place. And you should have seen that both the extent of inundation and the level of disconnection that occurs from fragmentation has a profound effect on the inundation pattern on the floodplain. But the graph on the bottom represents what that would mean in terms of a change in the total amount of algae, high quality food if you like, that's being produced at that sort of floodplain scale. And the proposed development in this scenario shows that about that kind of development would halve the amount of primary production, high quality food production on the floodplain, and of course have a really significant effect on the fisheries and all the other things that are dependent on it. And so it's really combining those pieces of information around remote sensing, modelling, being able to work with people who can bring those skills to the thing has been really quite instrumental in understanding what the implications of water resource development might be. Now, I really come back then to, I think, something that, as I said at the start, is really something that I've been very, very interested in for a long time now in my career, is how do we use that science, sorts of things that I've just shown you, to address water management issues. This particular figure comes from a paper. It's actually the result of a workshop that Dave Tickner led from WWF. It's published in Bioscience. It really presents what we've called an emergency recovery plan, and it does outline 6 key things that we could do as a society that would help to bend the curve of biodiversity loss in freshwater systems. And the graph reflects the alarming decline in freshwater diversity up until our current time. And it's proposed in this paper that if we did some of these things and actually implemented them at scale, then we'd go a long way in addressing some of that decline. And of course, accelerating the implementation of environmental flows was one of those, things like improving water quality, protecting critical habitat and so on, are some of the key messages that are in there. Now, that paper, as a publication, has been, had quite a lot of impact as a journal publication. But as Dave has reminded people on several occasions now, the real impact of this won't be through the journal citations. It really will depend on other players acting on these recommendations. And these things that are put in there, these actions that we could take to arrest biodiversity decline, are really not the things that we as scientists can directly have much influence on. And sure, the decisions need to be informed by the best science, and our science should be directed at focusing on outcomes for policy and management. But it also requires us to work very closely with government agencies and industry and communities. These are the groups of people who are actually going to implement these sorts of things. And so I think one of the really key things that I've learned over the years is just how important it is to be able to work with those groups if we really want to have our science taken up and used. And so, for example, in the work that we've done then on understanding the relationships between flow and ecology in river systems, we go from our basic understanding of flow ecology principles right through to developing tools to describe and implement, or go about implementing environmental flow decisions in freshwater. And some of the work that I've on this particular slide is the result of collaborations with colleagues, Professor Angela Arthington, Leroy Poff, and others, who've been quite instrumental in coming up with practical ways in which we can inform governments about how water can be provided for the environment. And we've taken those principles and used them in working very closely with government agencies in places like China, where they're really struggling with these sorts of issues, and having the ability to take those general principles, come up with very practical ways in which government agencies in particular can develop their policies on providing water for the environment has been a really quite an exciting outcome. We can also take the work we do in understanding the relationship between catchments and river systems, and particularly riparian vegetation and riparian zones and their influence on stream ecosystems. We know that there has a profound influence on both the quantity of food that's produced in terms of primary production and also, of course, terrestrial inputs into systems, but also the influence that changes in riparian condition can have not only on food quantity, but also on the quality of food too. And I've had over the years a number of students and postdocs who've done quite a lot of nice work on looking at these factors that influence both the quantity and quality of food that's available to consumers in freshwater. But then taking that information and turning it into something that, again, government agencies or community groups can use. And we've spent quite a lot of time over the last few decades developing simple tools and guidelines that can enable people to better manage the lands, riparian lands in particular, or to inform decision makers and what's the most cost-effective way to protect and repair freshwater systems. And then finally, not only that, looking at what the effects of land use are on stream ecosystem processes, but understanding more broadly what effect catchment vegetation or catchment land use and riparian condition, how they influence biodiversity and other measures of what we call stream ecosystem health. And I've spent quite a lot of time working with agencies over the last 2 or 3 decades on developing tools for assessing ecosystem health and developing tools to not only monitor but to report on stream ecosystem health as well. So these are really some of the examples, I think, of how we can take the more fundamental work that we've been doing and actually go that one step further into producing things that are directly usable by government or by industry in better managing and better protecting our freshwater resources. What should be fairly evident from that is that that work is, of course, not my work alone, and I can't emphasise enough how important it's been to actually form really productive collaborations. And that, to me, has been one of the really heartening things, one of the gratifying things, if you like, of my career, is being able to work with a great group of people, not only fellow ecologists, but remote sensing people, geomorphologists, social scientists, economists, and increasingly as we get into looking at these issues around water management, you start to really appreciate just how much we really do need the expertise of social scientists, economists, people who know where the money is, to really be able to do these things more effectively. And I really like to thank my colleagues over the years who've been quite instrumental in supporting and helping with that work. The other thing that I will note is that a lot of the work that I've done over the last 3 decades has really been enabled by collaborative funding programs, and this has been a bit of a feature of the funding environment in Australia for nearly 3 decades. There are a large number of government programs that, aside from the traditional Academy of Science or Australian Research Council, the sort of NSF equivalent, rather than just funding single grants on particular topics, these programs are designed to bring researchers together with end users. And so the Cooperative Research Centres program, funded by the Australian Federal Science Department, is really aimed at bringing researchers from different universities, different research organisations together with industry and other sectors of the economy. And when they started in the 1990s, they had a very strong public good focus, and there were several freshwater cooperative research centres that we were involved in that really funded quite a lot of the collaborative work that we did at that time. The Department of Agriculture in Australia had a very similar program, what they called the Rural Research and Development Corporations. And again, these were really designed to co-invest Australian government money with the primary industry sector. And for a long period, there was a particular body, Land and Water Australia, that was a key agency that was set up to really support research and development in natural resource management. And then finally, even in the Environment Department in Australia, there was a large collaborative program, originally called the Commonwealth Environment Research Facilities Scheme. It was designed to help address Australia's environmental challenges, and it's continued in various forms. Each term of government likes to rename these things, but we've pretty much had the same level of funding and the same programs available for the last 20 years. And one of the consortiums, one I've mentioned at the bottom there, the Tropical Rivers and Coastal Knowledge Consortium, was formed in 2005. This was the work with Michael Douglas and other colleagues that we put together through these funding schemes, but we were able to raise nearly $25 million in partnership with other universities and government agencies to actually initiate a really large campaign to study the largely unstudied systems in Northern Australia, and that work has pretty much continued to today. One of the things I'll say from this is they're not quite the conventional way of just applying for a research grant and then being left to your own devices for 2 or 3 years at a time. These are programs that come with very high transaction costs. They take a long time to negotiate and put together, often involves lots of meetings with different partners, but they often end up to be longer term initiatives, and they often end up to have a lot more money associated with them. So my experience that going through the effort of joining these larger collaborative things is really often worth the input costs and the transaction costs of having to work with a whole range of different partners. And in nearly all of those programs, one of the really key features is that we're asked to partner with the broader water sector, both industry partners and the government. And they can range from industry partners who are involved in managing wastewater treatment or water supply, utilities. It involves local government agencies or even state, federal government agencies. And it does give you the opportunity to work really well across disciplines. One of the things about doing that when you're forced, if you like, almost forced into those sort of marriages, it really requires you to address the cultural divide between those that are involved in water resource management, and in a lot of cases they're largely from engineering backgrounds, technical backgrounds. And so enabling us to work between those groups who are involved in that and those of us who are concerned more with the environmental or the broader society. And it really does help, I think, to build a better shared understanding of what the challenges are and an opportunity to seek more sustainable solutions. In my experience too, having worked at that interface for quite a while, it does significantly open up opportunities for you to work overseas. Because, as you probably gathered, that in many parts of the world they're dealing with water management issues on a scale that's quite hard to comprehend given your own experience. And so I've had the good fortune of being able to work over the years in places like China and Brazil, and a lot of that work has been done, again, in very close collaboration with the agencies who are responsible for managing those water resources, and also the research partners who are helping to inform that as well. And then, I guess, building on that is an opportunity to get involved in issues that go well beyond just at the national scale. And so, the ones I mentioned here in this slide, the Global Water System Project was a collaborative project that was funded under the Earth System Science Partnership nearly 15 years ago. It's continued in the form of a program under Future Earth called Water Future. But these programs are an opportunity to bring together mostly scientists from around the world to look at some more global issues. And they've been really quite instructive, I think, in informing some of the global debate that goes on at places like the World Water Forum. The one in 2018 was an opportunity for the first time at a World Water Forum to actually have a theme dedicated to ecosystems, and we were able to have a very strong role in guiding the development of that program at the 2018 World Water Forum. The Budapest Water Summits were very high-level policy discussions between national leaders around addressing water security issues largely across Europe. And then ultimately leading up to last year, the UN Water Conference, which was in New York, where we worked with the UN Water Group to actually propose a global science assessment for water, an IPCC style of assessment for fresh water, to really try and advance our science understanding and manage some of the water challenges going ahead. The group on the right, the Earth Commission, this is a group that I've been involved with now for the last 3 or 4 years. Again, I think quite interestingly, starting to look at global water issues in a much broader sense than the traditional planetary boundaries, and starting to look at, well, not only what are safe issues for the planet, but what are just. And the Earth Commission has been, I think, quite successful in bringing together a great variety of social scientists to address these issues of justice, and so that we can start to explore what are really safe and just boundaries for the planet, and in that particular work, we've been leading both the groundwater and surface water aspects of that. The other thing I guess I'd say about those works is that although they're quite interesting to meet with people, like people, and talk about those global issues, inevitably they also lead to some really high impact publications, and the couple that are mentioned there are the outcome of those collaborations, which have been, I think, quite important to be involved with. So maybe just to conclude with some things I think I've learned along the way in getting here, I really can't emphasise enough that given the threats that we have to freshwater systems, there really is an urgency to really focus our efforts on trying to tackle some of these management challenges. And I'd argue that to do that, it really does require that you start to look for effective partnerships with the water sector, the water industry, the government agencies, and broader community groups that are involved in managing our waterways. I'd argue that it's still possible to do really good science. You don't have to trade one thing off for the other, and have impact in both ways, have impact in terms of writing good papers and also have good impact in the outcomes that you'll generate. And I'd also argue that in doing that, it opens up a whole raft of opportunities in funding that are not easily available, not readily available through your standard science granting process. The other thing that I guess that I've learned along the way, and I guess it's some advice to particularly the early career people here today, is get involved, get really actively involved in the work that you do. Play an active role in the science societies. I think that point was made earlier this evening. Maybe even help organise a conference or a workshop, because they're the opportunities that you get to meet people from around the world and meet other players, and they're the networks that'll help build your career later on. And look for those networking opportunities, and particularly networking opportunities with industry and government partners. They're always looking for reviews to be done, or workshops that they're running and they need some science input, or they're looking to form an advisory committee and they need some scientific input. I'd encourage you to take advantage of those at every opportunity, because there's a real opportunity to have some influence at those committees. And even go as far as nominate for government committees, boards. And I've done that on several occasions now. And it really is the opportunity to have a direct influence on policy making, because you're sitting around the table helping to actually make policy rather than just write about it. And finally, just on research collaborations and partnerships, I mean, the reality is, and I certainly can speak for this myself, you don't have all the expertise, I certainly don't, and you don't have all the resources to do some of the things you'd like to do. So there's so much more you can achieve by working with others and having a really rewarding experience in doing that. The transaction costs of collaborating can be quite high. There are lots of risks in large-scale collaborations, but I think in the long term it becomes really worth it in terms of the outcomes that you'll get for that and the impact that your work will have. And wherever possible, explore those international collaborations, whatever opportunities there are, because they really are great opportunities to learn about new environments and learn about how others are tackling the same sort of problems as you. And finally, I guess my last bit of advice is to have fun along the way. And for those of you who know me, you know that I've had quite a lot of fun over the years as well. But I'll leave you with some advice. Noel Hines once said to me that you work really, really hard to get a PhD, and you should use it to see the world, and it's something that I can highly recommend to everyone. So on that, thank you very much for your attention.